Welcome to the next episode of Daniel's Desk. Today I have Gregory Angelo from the Log Cabin Republicans in Washington, D.C., just talking to me about his organization and the advocacy work that they do on behalf of LGBT people. So, Gregory, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So you saw the two different parties, their platforms, kind of what they stood for,
Yeah.
and the Republican Party spoke more to you.
That's correct, right?
You do realize a lot of people are probably sitting here thinking, but you are gay. And the Republican Party, especially in 2016, adopted the most anti-LGBT platform in its history.
Right. Well,
So
you're preaching the choir on that. When people talk about the GOP adopting the most anti-LGBT platform in history, I'm the guy who said that. It was the email I sent to our supporters branding the GOP platform as such that ended up going viral. It was on top trend on Facebook, trending Twitter and elsewhere. So I'm well aware of what the Republican Party platform says about some LGBT issues. But when you get down to it, you're talking about sentences on a couple of sentences in a much larger document. So when I talk about being far more in agreement with the preponderance of the Republican Party platform, doesn't mean I agree with everything that's in the platform. And when you look cumulatively at everything that's within the GOP platform, I agree with 95, 96, 98% maybe of everything that's in there. Nonetheless, and I think it's important to be able to speak as a Republican to those egregious parts of the platform that I disagree with. It's easy for any Democrat to criticize the Republican Party's platform. I think it could be a separate discussion in our conversation today. But the Democrats are not perfect either. And I think that there's a greater value in and a credibility that comes from Republicans speaking about differences they have on the platform than ever could be expressed by a Democrat.
Okay, but words on words in a document mean things, and the Republican platform does call for marriage, dissolving marriage equality.
Right.
It calls for gay conversion therapy, which psychologists have deemed inappropriate.
Right.
Those are pretty intense things, right? Like, how are you advocating to get those out of the platform?
Well, we were advocating that they shouldn't be drafted into the platform in the first place.
Yeah.
And we'll continue to fight against those things. But here's the thing, like when I say sentences on a page, I'm not just being glib. So two things you mentioned. Marriage equality.
Yeah.
It's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. It doesn't matter if Gorsuch is confirmed. It doesn't matter if Scalia came back from the dead and went back to sit on the Supreme Court. It wouldn't matter if there were 9 Scalias on the Supreme Court. Marriage equality is here. It's here to stay. There is no court case, even a hypothetical one, that could reverse that. So don't waste any sleep wondering what the GOP platform says about marriage equality or what any of the opponents of marriage equality on the right say. They have to swallow the pill that marriage equality is now, and gay families, I would add, are a part of the fabric of American society, and the existence of same-sex marriage does not do them any harm. So secondly, conversion therapy. This is a practice that has been not only psychologically debunked, but it has been branded as dangerous by the American Medical Association, American Psychological Association. Again, our sister think tank, Liberty Education Forum, has done a tremendous amount of work on the science of sexual orientation, why being gay is not a choice, the dangers of ex-gay therapy, and we continue to advocate against that. But there is no one who will say that we need to make or we could practice. There's no lawmaker out there, especially in Washington, D.C., and the federal government, that says we need to make a law requiring conversion therapy. So my point is this. There are people on the far right that every 4 years decide to put a flag on the hill on a bunch of preposterous issues that they care very deeply about, but that do not represent the thoughts or the priorities of mainstream conservatives.
I will have to pause though. And to those points, there's two things that came to my brain when you said that. The first, I think you're right, it has been litigated in the courts, but a candidate that you endorsed, Mitt Romney, in 2012, he called for a federal amendment to define marriage as between one man and one woman.
Yeah, but that's not going to happen.
And so do you think that Trump can get an amendment? An amendment can be passed. You don't think that there's the taste for that in the Republican Party?
No, and not only can it, yes, in a hypothetical world, can a constitutional convention be called? Can a constitutional amendment be put forth saying that marriage is only between one man and one woman? Yeah, it could happen. I mean, people can call for a constitutional amendment for anything. The question is there an appetite for that in the United States? No. Is there an appetite for that within the Republican Party? No, not enough of one to actually get movement on that. Does Donald Trump, our president, have an appetite to do that? No. I mean, these are not the things that Trump campaigned on.
So a lot of people would agree with you that Donald Trump doesn't have the appetite, but in terms of the gay conversion therapies. But we all know Mike Pence has advocated for such policies in the past. Being the vice president, he's really powerful. If something were to happen to Donald Trump, he would become our president. So do you think that in that case, something could, gay conversion?
I'm not going to come onto your show and be a Mike Pence apologist, but I think we really need to be careful when we talk about discussions regarding Mike Pence and conversion therapy.
Yeah.
What you're talking about, if you and I are talking about the same thing, is a quote from decades ago. So we're talking about years removed from where we are currently as a culture in regard to LGBT issues. But a quote that talked about Pence's desire to see funds that were federal funds that were allocated for HIV and AIDS to only go to programs that advocated for abstinence as opposed to converting gay people. So my point, it's a little glib to say that Mike Pence has advocated for conversion therapy, and some of these stories out there saying that Mike Pence supports shock therapy for gay youth. Yeah. Not only is that been proven false, not only are Mike Pence's words being taken out of context and twisted, but I think there is an obligation that individuals, especially individuals on the gay left, have to not use rhetoric like that. Because what you're doing, you scare gay kids.
Yeah. That just brings me to the point of, you all endorsed Mitt Romney in 2012, who called for this federal amendment, which, as you've spoken to, probably wouldn't have gotten passed, but he still called for it. But then in 2016, as you've said, Donald Trump was the most vocally pro-LGBT in the history of a Republican candidate. Mm-hmm. I mean, I remember watching the debates in 2012, and the Republican Party booed a gay soldier.
I remember that.
For asking a question. And then in 2016, we fast forward, Donald Trump says, I, support LGBTQ at the convention, gets applause at the convention. Yet you all still don't endorse him. Why did you not endorse Donald Trump?
It's an important point. I mean, it's a little bit of nuance there. I mean, we withheld endorsement from Trump and decided to focus on down ballot races so that if he were elected, which he was, Trump would have governing Republican majorities in the House and Senate, which he now does. With Donald Trump, in our statement announcing we were withholding endorsement, we praised him for his pro-LGBT positions, said that it was historic and worthy of commendation. But at the same time, this is a man who has never held elected office in his life. And he was at the time running and now has won election to the highest office in the land, leader of the free world. And for myriad reasons, the board of directors came to the conclusion that it would be a bit of a gamble to put our 40-year brand and our history behind an individual that we had nothing to, whose governance was entirely unpredictable at the time. This is someone, again, who'd never held elected office anywhere. So there weren't even reference points.
There's a lot of other communities that he has attacked in the past. There's, the Muslim ban, which they don't want to call a ban, but
it's not a ban, and it's not about Muslims.
It is not a ban. But okay, so what do you think it is then, or what was it?
I don't think that there's anything inherently wrong with putting a thoughtful pause on an immigration program that both Democrats and Republicans agree is broken, and reviewing best practices. I mean, this travel restriction executive order was just a 90-day. It was a 90-day pause that would have allowed the Trump administration to review current immigration protocols and processes, and I think that
indefinitely for Syrian refugees, though.
Indefinitely. Well, I mean,
longer than 90 for that.
Right, and I think that ways that this was rolled out and executed could have been done better. And I think it's important to say that the helping people in other countries doesn't necessarily begin and end with accepting refugees into the United States.
Many people would say that you are losing the fight to social conservatives. What would you say to those people who are saying within your party you are losing the battle to social conservatives? And how have you tried to,
Yeah, I don't know why people would say that. I mean, we have marriage equality in all 50 states that was given
not
to
because
us
of Republicans.
yes, it was. Yes, it was because of Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan appointed Justice Kennedy to the Supreme Court, inarguably the most pro-gay justice to ever sit on the bench in the nation's highest court. And it wasn't just the Obergefell decision; it was the Windsor decision that struck down the Defense of Marriage Act, the Anti-Gay Defense of Marriage Act. Justice Kennedy brought us the Lawrence versus Texas decision that even Justice Scalia himself would lead to nationwide marriage equality. We would not have Justice Kennedy if Ronald Reagan was not president. We would not have marriage equality in this country if Ronald Reagan was not president. Look just back in 2013, passage of the Employment Non-Discrimination Act in the United States Senate that included the votes of 10 Republicans. I had the honor of serving in a volunteer capacity long before my present position, but serving as the chairman of Log Cabin Republicans of New York State at a time when marriage equality passed for the first time in history in a Republican-controlled legislature. That was, I believe, June of 2011. You have even evangelical Christians. You want to talk about like social conservatives in particular. Evangelical Christians in this election cycle that revealed through their voting process in the primaries and elsewhere that pocketbook issues are just as important to them in many respects as some of the social issues that they used to be able to reliably go to the polls on. If you look at the trajectory of where support for marriage equality and LGBT non-discrimination is going, it's always going up. It's never going down. It's going up more slowly with Christian evangelicals, with social conservatives, but the numbers are still moving in the right direction. So, anyone that's saying that Log Cabin Republicans is losing the battle doesn't know their history on these issues. We're fighting. It's a long war, and some battles we win and some we lose. But we're always headed toward victory as time goes on.
I would charge you to say that President Obama actually created the climate that allowed Justice Kennedy to support marriage equality. Because I think if it had been under a Bush who was advocating for a federal amendment to change marriage, the appetite for the political climate would have been a lot more hostile towards the gay community. But I think President Obama did a lot to change that. And going to President Obama, how would you rate? I'm not going to ask overall, but how would you rate President Obama on LGBT issues? So only on LGBT issues. How would you grade his presidency?
He was good on LGBT issues. I mean, I'm not gonna engage in contortions. I certainly have other disagreements with policies the president had, but on LGBT issues, I think there is a fair amount of credit that he deserves. I would argue he should have come out in support of marriage equality sooner, but I'm not going to begrudge the fact that a sitting president declared his public support for marriage equality.
LGBT organizations in general oftentimes focus on the G of LGBTQ. So oftentimes it's the gay men, oftentimes upper class, white gay men who are driving in their interest. Mm-hmm. How does Log Cabin Republicans really fight for the L's and the B's and the T's of the LGBT community?
Well, I mean, a couple of ways. I mean, I would point out, it's a point of pride for me that I successfully lobbied the Log Cabin Republicans National Board of Directors to change our mission statement in January of 2015 from one that only referenced gay and lesbian to one that is now fully inclusive, LGBT, advocating for issues related to gender identity and non-discrimination policy has been something that I've done since I became president of this organization in January of 2013, and continue to do. And I look everywhere for unique voices in the LGBT conservative movement to take center stage. Just last week, someone who is a chapter leader in Log Cabin Republicans of Washington, D.C., and someone who I'm also happy to call a friend, a man by the name of Rick LeCount, was on the cover story of a local D.C. gay magazine called Metro Weekly, and he is a gay black conservative, and is someone who, in many respects, refuses to be defined singularly by any of those issues, but who nonetheless is one of those people who brings a multi-dimensional perspective to what it is to be a gay conservative.
Yeah.
We just elected our first female chairman in history, Sarah Longwell, to our national board of directors. So we have a lesbian who's in charge of the national board of directors for the first time in our history.
Wow.
I spent time on Capitol Hill lobbying with transgender individuals, and I'm in regular communication with transgender Republican supporters that we have.
What in your mind stands as your proudest kind of legislative victory as an organization?
I'll answer that question like maybe threefold. I mean,
Yeah.
my personal favorite when the Employment Non-Discrimination Act passed the United States Senate, and when 10 Republicans voted for that, because that's something that I was personally advocating for. I was on Capitol Hill right up until the end, right up until that vote, and I was proud to see so many Republicans that many on the gay left had written off that voted for that legislation. So
And that your organization actively pushed.
we're actively lobbying.
Yeah.
We left no stone unturned. And while I was excited to see a number of those Republicans who did vote for the legislation, ultimately people like Senator Hatch, Senator Flake, Senator McCain, and others, Toomey in Pennsylvania, there was a personal pride that I took in that, because I was working to try to convince all of those senators and more that supporting this legislation was the right thing to do. So that's my personal favorite. Passage of repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell is something that our organization holds near and dear. That might actually be one of our greatest victories, because we're so tied up in this court case, Log Cabin Republicans versus United States of America. For your viewers who aren't familiar, you can go on Wikipedia, you can see the whole history of that.
Yeah.
But that was a lawsuit we filed in 2004, during the administration of George W. Bush, arguing that Don't Ask, Don't Tell was unconstitutional. It was not resolved until Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed in, I believe this was the fall of 2011. It was the lame duck Congress in 2010. So I think it was October, November, December of 20. All right, thereabouts, right?
Yeah.
But full repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell is something that, and our court case that precipitated it, is something that is a major point of pride nationwide for us.
What would you say to those liberals out there who, call you and your organization crazy for voting for Republicans? If you had one last message to say to them, what would it be?
Well, I would hope there are some LGBT conservatives who are watching your show today also. So this message just wouldn't be directed at LGBT liberals, but because you asked, I mean, it's pretty simple. If you put all your faith into a single political party, your destiny is to be ignored by one and taken for granted by the other. So whether you are an LGBT Republican or an LGBT liberal and you don't support conservative principles, or if you're an LGBT liberal and you can't fathom the idea of an LGBT Republican, just know that we are doing important work that will ultimately benefit the LGBT community regardless of party affiliation. And in many ways, I always say to our members, Log Cabin Republicans are the bravest of the brave. As LGBT conservatives, we often take heat both from some on the fringe right and some on the far left. But nonetheless, we do it because conservative politics and a conservative identity is part of who we are. We see eye to eye with conservative principles more than we do liberal principles. And so what we're doing is we're staying true to ourselves. And I think that we should respect those differences in others. And I think that's one of the things we need a little bit more of in our political climate today, is that type of mutual respect.
I could not agree more. Open dialogue. I think that is something that is lost in our Congress. I think people from across the aisles can be friends. So thank you for coming.
You got it. It was my pleasure.
We are going to end with the new game called the Hat Seat.
Okay.
So, have you ever played a game with a hot seat? It's you get one question and you have to answer it honestly.
Okay.
So I have some kind of interesting questions. Some of them are nice. Some of them are a little, intriguing. But you get to pick one, and then you have to read it aloud to the audience, and then answer it truthfully.
I got it.
So,
let's see. Well, this is an interesting one. So, who is your celebrity crush?
Ooh.
All right. And I will answer this honestly. I don't have a celebrity crush. You know why? I don't. To me, and what's funny is, like, I was asked this question just a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
Right. And by the way, I did not know this was coming, but I think that's kind of, I've never understood the idea of celebrity crushes. I remember like in the movie 54, like this movie that came out years ago about Studio 54, but like Ryan Phillippe, I just thought was like really cute.
Okay,
So yeah, but
Cruel
I never
Intentions.
like. That's right, Cruel Intentions. That's right, but never had like a crush on him. But all right, like that's the closest maybe I ever came to having like a celebrity crush. Right.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks so much, Greg.
You got it. Thank you. I had fun coming on your show.
Awesome. Today's gripe may only be relevant to those who live in a city or frequent it often enough to get annoyed. I cannot stand bathroom attendants. For those of you who don't know what they are, they're basically people who sit in the bathroom and wait for you to finish. Then they hand you a paper towel at the end. It's pretty awkward. So, why do I hate bathroom attendants? Well, it's not because they're not hardworking people, because they are. And I 100% support you if that's what you want to do. But it doesn't mean I have to like you. For one thing, I never have cash, so I have to leave the bathroom and not tip these people, which just makes me feel bad. Also, the sink isn't that far away from the stall, so while I'm going to the bathroom, all I can think about is the person waiting on the other side for me to finish and hand me a paper towel. It is just awkward. If you agree that restaurants and hotels need to get rid of bathroom attendants, comment below. If you disagree, comment below. Just tune in next week to Daniel's Desk.